begin with the breaking news. Those images coming in from the Gulf of Mexico tonight, a deadly blast.
Beneath the blue-green waters of the Gulf of Mexico, a massive maritime engineering project is unfolding at the deep-sea port of Progreso in Yucatan. Dredgers tirelessly dig into the seabed, removing tons of soil in one of Mexico's most ambitious modern undertakings. But what exactly is driving this colossal effort, and why is it so significant? Join us as we uncover the reasons behind this transformative project. Who's paying and for what? For years, Progreso has been the peninsula's maritime gateway, serving as a hub for cargo, oil, and cruise tourism. But now, the port is undergoing a transformation designed to move it into a different league of global logistics. At the heart of this effort lies a financing package worth 7.9 billion pesos, or about $400 million. Officials in Yucatan have hailed the expansion as an economic turning point, noting that the works have been in planning for more than 25 years before dredging finally began in August 2025. The budget itself reflects Mexico's model for major maritime works. Ports in the country operate under the scheme of administration's Del Sistema Portuario Nacional, or ASIPONA, federally chartered port administrations that coordinate with state governments and private concessionaires. In Progreso, ASIPONA de Progreso oversees the project in tandem with the Yucatan state government and private partners such as APM Terminals, the Maersk Group subsidiary that runs the existing container operations. The federal government has emphasized the project's role within the broader Plan Renacimiento Maya, Yucatan's regional development framework, tying it directly to national priorities such as the Tren Maya or Maya Train. The results will be shocking. The core of the physical works lies in the channel upgrade, which is perhaps the most technically challenging and capital-intensive portion of the entire modernization. For decades, Progreso's navigation channel has measured about 150 meters in width, 8 kilometers in length, and no deeper than 11 to 12 meters at its most useful points. These dimensions limited vessel size to bulk carriers and container ships carrying roughly 36,000 to 40,000 tons. Now, the dredging campaign aims to expand the channel to 180 meters in width, extend it from 8 to 10 kilometers, and deepen it to as much as 14 meters. Interim documents prepared by the Port Authority list figures of 180 meters wide, 8.1 kilometers long, and 13.3 meters deep as near-term targets, but industry and local reporting confirm that the end-state objective remains a 10-kilometer, 14-meter channel. Once achieved, these dimensions will enable the port to accommodate vessels of up to 100,000 tons. This is a seismic jump in carrying capacity. It effectively doubles or even triples the size of ships that can call at Progreso. The scale of the dredging required to make this possible is immense. The cutter suction dredger Fernando de Mogollones, a 138.5-meter vessel with 30,000 horsepower, was brought across the Atlantic to lead the project. It is one of fewer than 20 dredgers in the world capable of this kind of heavy rock cutting and continuous seabed removal. The machine operates around the clock, cutting into the seabed to reshape the channel geometry while simultaneously pumping sand and soil into designated reclamation zones where new port platforms are being built. Observers have noted that the amount of seabed material moved by the dredger will run into the hundreds of millions of cubic feet by the project's conclusion, a quantity comparable to the largest port expansions in the Western Hemisphere. Beyond the access channel, the port's interior layout is also being reconfigured. Plans call for 2 new turning basins, or ciabogas, each measuring roughly 600 meters across, enabling larger vessels to maneuver safely once inside the harbor. At the same time, the interior basin will be deepened to about 12.5 meters, aligning with the new channel depth so that cargo operations can proceed without draft restrictions. Engineers emphasize that without these turning circles and basin deepening, the gains achieved by enlarging the access channel would be undercut, since large vessels would struggle to turn or dock once inside the port. Complementing the underwater work is the creation of entirely new land for operations. 2 massive platforms of 40 hectares each are being reclaimed from the sea using dredged material. This expansion will increase the port's operational footprint to around 116 hectares, a dramatic jump in usable surface area. The reclaimed land will support up to 16 new berth positions, 2 wave dissipation barriers to shield against storms, and new piers measuring 600 meters and 300 meters. In simple terms, this means more quay space for container handling, bulk cargo, and potentially even new specialized terminals for fuels or other commodities. For comparison, the 80 hectares of new land equates to about 110 football fields. While the direct port modernization carries its own 7.9 billion peso price tag, the project is embedded in a much larger web of transportation investments. Chief among these is the proposed cargo rail link connecting Progreso to the Tren Maya. Mexico's federal government has already announced a 2-stage freight plan for the Tren Maya system, which will include multiple intermodal terminals in Progreso, Cancun, Chetumal, Poxela, and Palenque. Government communiques describe the construction of new freight terminals and a 70-kilometer spur line to Progreso, with some reporting placing the cost of the Progreso cargo rail project alone at about 35 billion pesos. If built to these specifications, the rail link would allow containerized and bulk cargo arriving at Progreso to be loaded directly onto trains, which would then move goods across the Yucatan Peninsula and into the interoceanic corridor. The integration of Progreso into the Tren Maya freight system reflects Mexico's effort to position the Yucatan Peninsula as a logistics crossroads. At present, Progreso handles roughly 54,000 TEU, or 20-foot equivalent units, per year and averages 22 container vessel calls per month, mostly small-scale feeder services. With expanded berths, deeper channels, and a rail link, those figures could multiply several times over within a decade. The Maya Trains freight component will create tens of thousands of direct jobs across its 2 stages of construction and operation, with Progreso expected to serve as one of the primary gateways for both exports and imports. From a strategic perspective, the scale of investment also signals Mexico's ambition to reduce logistical bottlenecks that have historically isolated the Yucatan economy. Progreso is the state's only deep-sea port, yet its shallow access channel and small turning basins have long restricted trade volumes. Manufacturers and exporters in the region often had to rely on overland transport to Veracruz or other Gulf ports to ship goods abroad. Mexico is wagering over $2 billion on Progreso. The potential payoff is substantial. The ability to host 100,000-ton vessels, to reclaim 80 hectares of new industrial land, and to plug directly into a modernized freight rail system spanning the peninsula. If realized, the transformation of Progreso would allow it to compete with ports like Veracruz, Altamira, or even Gulf ports in the United States, which until now have dwarfed Progreso in capacity and throughput. Whether the project delivers the expected returns will depend on international trade flows, environmental safeguards, and efficient coordination between federal, state, and private actors, but the investment already marks one of the boldest maritime gambits in modern Mexican history. The hardware doing the digging. When the expansion of the port of Progreso finally moved from planning to execution in 2025, one of the first and most visible signs of progress was the arrival of the Fernando de Magallanes. This vessel, operated by the Belgian marine engineering giant Jan de Nul Group, is a cutter suction dredger of formidable power and size, measuring 138.5 meters in length and powered by engines producing close to 30,000 horsepower. Few dredgers in the world are capable of the tasks assigned to it at Progreso, where the project requires cutting through compact seabed material, deepening the navigation channel, and pumping millions of cubic meters of sand and soil to reclamation sites for new port platforms. Industry sources note that fewer than 20 dredgers worldwide are in this capability class, placing the Fernando de Magallanes among an elite fleet of machines relied upon for the world's most challenging dredging projects. The vessel's deployment to Yucatan was planned years in advance. Before arriving in Mexico in August 2025, the Fernando de Magallanes sailed across the Atlantic Ocean. The choice of a cutter suction dredger was dictated by the geology of the Gulf of Mexico off Yucatan's coast. Unlike trailing suction hopper dredgers, which are better suited for loose sand and maintenance dredging, a cutter suction dredger is equipped with a powerful rotating cutter head that can fragment compact soils and even soft rock. Once loosened, the material is sucked up through a suction pipe and pumped via floating or submerged pipelines to designated fill areas. In Progreso's case, much of this material is being used to reclaim land for 2 new 40-hectare platforms. The ability to cut, suction, and pump continuously allows the Fernando de Mogollons to move vast volumes of seabed material. The Fernando de Mogollons is almost the size of a mid-sized cargo ship. Its installed power of around 30,000 horsepower gives it the strength to operate cutter heads capable of rotating against dense seabed layers while driving pumps that can move slurry over distances of several kilometers. The dredger also carries onboard positioning and monitoring systems that ensure dredging accuracy down to precise depth and alignment tolerances, an essential feature when expanding a navigation channel that must meet international maritime safety standards. The vessel's dredge pumps, discharge pipeline systems, and cutter ladders are modular, allowing operators to configure them for different material types and project requirements. Globally, dredgers of this size and capability are dispatched only to the most strategic of maritime works, such as port deepening, land reclamation for airports, or major canal expansions. Jan de Nul has deployed the Fernando de Mogollons on projects in Europe, Asia, and the Middle East, making its arrival in Mexico notable as a sign of the government's commitment to completing the Progreso modernization on schedule. The project itself has been in discussion since the late 1990s, but delayed by budget constraints, environmental assessments, and shifting political priorities. This deployment shows that after nearly 3 decades of planning, the expansion had finally entered an irreversible construction phase. But this is only one side of the picture. The challenges. The transformation of Progreso is not unfolding in a vacuum. The environmental and legal context is proving just as complex as the engineering challenges. The broader Maya Train program, of which the Progreso freight spur is intended to become a strategic extension, continues to face lawsuits and public scrutiny from environmental groups, indigenous communities, and legal advocates. Organizations such as the Centro Mexicano de Derecho Ambiental, or CEMDA, have repeatedly argued that environmental impact assessments carried out for different sections of the Maya Train were incomplete, rushed, or not sufficiently transparent. In 2022 and 2023, these claims gained judicial weight, with multiple federal courts issuing injunctions that temporarily halted sections of construction, particularly in ecologically sensitive areas like the Calakmul Biosphere Reserve and karst landscapes in Quintana Roo. Though most of these suspensions were lifted after modifications to the plans, they established an important precedent. Legal oversight will remain a decisive factor here. Technical experts have also highlighted the ecological stakes specific to Yucatan's coastline.